Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, and welcome to In the Sahel, WADR's weekly magazine that delves into the heart of the African security crisis, telling stories and strategies to shape the region's response to pressing challenges. I'm Abdullahi Hassan, your host. This week, we'll be discussing challenges relating to respect for regional balance in the implementation of development projects. Well, today's package opens in Niger, where nearly 70% of the population is under 25 and faces a critical problem of youth unemployment and underemployment according to official data. This is due to lack of job opportunities and partly to an imbalance in the distribution of development projects across the country's 7 regions. The authorities have launched several initiatives in an attempt to respond to the concerns of the population, but the main problem remains how to match these projects with the socio-economic realities of the communities concerned. For those concerned, there is an urgent need to redress inequalities. Christopher Aticho tells us more in this report by Murtala Zuberu in Niamey.
In Niger, several development projects have been initiated by the government to meet the needs of vulnerable populations. Initiatives in various fields are being launched in several localities of the Central Sahel country. However, the beneficiary communities are constantly complaining. According to them, the projects in place do not reflect the realities of their areas. Jambo Malam is a member of the civil society organization Voice of the Voiceless, based in Maradi, one of the 7 regions of Niger.
Instead of studying, they'll have to come back to the region with the beneficiaries of this project to work out a program, and then it will work. But when a project comes with a program, they don't listen to the beneficiaries. That's why it's always doomed to failure. And when they come with all the materials. And just for the defense of the materials, almost a third of the project's amount is on this side.
Presque un tiers du montant du projet part de ce côté.
These concerns of Maradi's youth are well understood by Lawali Omaru, a legal expert. In his view, development projects need to be restructured to take account of the community needs.
Eux, en tant que projet ou programme, quel appui, quel accompagnement ces partenaires-là doivent faire?
As a project or program, what support do these partners need to be able to support the state in implementing its public service missions? That's the first point. Secondly, the approach consists of seeing how to undertake these humanitarian actions. So it has to go through the state. It has to go through the local authorities. That is the regional council at regional level. It has to be informed. The prefect of the department must be informed. Then the municipal council. So the community exists on the basis of a communal territory. The elected authorities of the territory must therefore be involved. In our personal experience, it's not uncommon for people to intervene without going through the authorities. The mayor is not informed, only the village chief. And sometimes when they do show up, the NGOs take over, coming and going as they please. We don't even know what they are saying. That's why, in my opinion, there is sometimes infiltration.
Et ce qui fait que parfois il y a même, permettez-moi le terme, des infiltrations.
Mato Zakaria, another member of the Niger Civil Society, believes that the authorities must stop relying on these projects to help the most vulnerable.
C'est très honnête que ces ONG-là soient entendues.
Honestly, we hear about these NGOs. We are working on it, but organizing these NGOs and galvanizing them towards the objectives set by the state, we can do a good job. But what is the government proposing? We need a national option. Because NGOs work for a limited time, but a state project is what we call short-term, long-term, until the end of that period. It's like education. You can't rely on NGOs to manage an education system. These are mistakes that NGOs have made. But we have to change all that. Niger must have its own program for all these areas that affect the environment.
Son propre programme pour ce qui est de tous ces volets-là qui touchent l'environnement.
Last June, the government of Niger withdrew the approval of several non-government organizations involved in development projects. The authorities suspect them of having links with terrorist groups.
A report by Niamey's Murtala Zuberu and voiced by Christopher Aticho. In Mali, authorities are struggling with respecting regional balance in terms of project implementation. In the central regions of the country, particularly Mopti and Bandiagara, insecurity is one of the main factors holding back development projects. This situation makes it difficult to implement these initiatives equitably across the regions. More details in this feature from our correspondent Aliu Cham and presented by Imo Edet.
Mali, a vast country in the central Sahel, has for many years faced the challenge of implementing development projects. Disparities between the various regions are constantly widening. While those in the south benefit from most development projects, the reality is quite different in the central and northern regions, which are plagued by insecurity. According to this female leader from Bandiagara, who spoke on condition of anonymity, development initiatives vary according to the realities of the towns.
In my opinion, there's an imbalance in terms of development project. But I think that development projects differ from one region to another. For example, Bandiagara and Gao don't have the same development project, so it depends on needs and realities.
Her view is largely shared by Hamadou Mega, a young civil society activist from Mopti located in Mali's central region.
It depends on the needs of the regions according to the needs that have been identified. Because before each project, studies are carried out to find out what the population is suffering from, what the basis is, and what the causes are. For example, Segu may have a project that doesn't interest Mopti, and vice versa. Otherwise, even here, very close to Bandiagara, there are projects in Bandiagara that are not in Mopti. Yet, Bandiagara Mopti is only 45 kilometers from here.
For Soleimani Sagara, another young leader from the Bandiagara region, the state must involve young people in development projects.
Give quotas to young people. The state must require that a certain percentage of young people be involved in the implementation of these development activities. Without this, it's not easy to integrate young people. It's up to the state to make political decisions that favor the inclusion of young people in development initiatives.
In addition to the armed conflicts that are holding back the development process, there is also corruption. Abdul Karim Mega, sitting in a farmhouse animated by the deafening sound of birds, acknowledges regional inequalities which he believes are due to poor management by the state. However, this human rights defender believes that communities need to be involved in such initiatives.
It has been a reality, and even today, we know that there is an imbalance in development between regions. We can't reach northern regions like Gao. In addition to the insecurity, the road has not been passable for some time. The further north you go, the less development you feel. But I think all this is the consequence of the weakness of the state at a time when development aid has been hijacked by the leaders of these communities. We therefore recommend that initiatives involving local communities be put in place. So what we recommend is to encourage initiatives involving communities.
To meet these challenges, it is essential to develop an inclusive approach, according to several informed observers, to achieve a balance in implementation of development projects.
Imo Edet voiced that report by Aliu Cham in Bamako. Our focus on challenges relating to respect for regional balance in the implementation of development projects takes us to Nigeria, a multi-ethnic and culturally diverse federation of 36 autonomous states and the Federal Capital Territory. Nigeria continues to face many social and economic challenges that include insecurity, such as banditry and kidnappings, especially in the northwest region, continued insurgency by terrorist groups in the northeast, and separatist agitations in the southeast. Independent political observers, public affairs analysts and security experts have all said the lack of implementation of development projects or perceived neglect from the government have contributed to the myriad of problems the country is facing. From Abuja, Usman Umar reports.
Despite having the largest economy and population in Africa, Nigeria offers limited opportunities to most of its citizens. Nigerians born in 2020 are expected to be future workers 36% as productive as they could be if they had full access to education and health, marking the 7th lowest human capital index in the world. Weak job creation and entrepreneurial prospects stifle the absorption of the 3.5 million Nigerians entering the labor force every year, and many workers choose to emigrate in search of better opportunities. An estimated 87 million Nigerians live below the poverty line, the world's second largest poor population after India. Yet, multidimensional inequality continues to be large, with the best performing regions of Nigeria comparing favorably to upper middle income countries, while the worst performing states fare below the average for low income. In most areas of the country, state capacity is low, service delivery is limited, and insecurity and violence are widespread. Infrastructure gaps constrain access to electricity and hinder the domestic economic integration that would allow the country to leverage its large market size, which is aggravated by trade.
Usman Umar reporting there. Joining us from Abuja, Nigeria's capital, is Austin Aigbe, a public affairs analyst. Aigbe, a campaigner for good governance, says the challenges of implementation of development projects are similar to those found in developing economies and pose a serious threat to democracy.
Thank you. Like you said, it's a bane of development in Africa, where you have virtually everywhere you go around Africa, you see still-bed projects that are abandoned, and you're asking yourself, why would they abandon this kind of fantastic project? One of the major reasons for those kind of challenges, number one, improper planning. Two, poor funding. Three, of course, which is more like answers both questions, is low political will. You are formulating development project, and you know you cannot complete it within your time regime, and you know that because it is not people friendly, maybe it's one kind of big project that you know won't be completed in the next 10 years, and you have not marked how that project will be completed in the next 10 years. Suddenly you start it 2 years to when you are leaving power, you then push it to the next to incoming administration, and incoming administration doesn't see it as a viable project. It is abandoned. And of course, underneath all of this is corruption. Once projects are instituted, before you know what's happening, there is what they call in budget variation. That due to inflationary actions, what was quoted as $20 billion, for instance, is no longer attainable. That you need to go back to the assembly to go and rebudget. Do you know often, if you find out what they will rebudget more than the amount that has been previously allocated. We have a project in Abuja, for instance, a bridge project that has been under construction for 13 years. This bridge project started with about 2 billion naira. As we speak now, the last budgetary allocation was about 270 billion. So the question is, what happened? Those projects becomes an avenue of stealing money. It become a conduit pipe. In the name of projects, political actors then begin to siphon. And another avenue, they call it constituency development projects. National Assembly members, State House of Assembly members, they put certain amount of money in budget so that they can it is their company that will eventually do it. So they will not do it because it's part of their own national cake. So it's a combination of factors. Number one, it is the poor political will. Number two, poor consultation. Number three, and above all, which I think is more important, political will, and above all, corruption underneath all of those abandoned projects.
Let's talk about how Nigeria is really coping with some of these challenges and how it is impacting, let's say, the peace and stability in a country of over 200 million people, 36 states and 6 geopolitical zones. How is this playing out for the country?
Yes, you see, the crisis of Nigerian states are large and is more of our inability to manage our diversity. While countries elsewhere, like the United States, will manage their diversity, the U.S. has too many ethnic nationalities. We have the Hispanic, we have the African American, but they are able to manage that diversity for the good of the country. Whereas in our country, we are using the ethnicity or what they call diversity to fight among ourselves. So when you have a president from the north, he's seen as not a Nigerian, he's seen as a northerner. Is seen as a northern president, rather than see a president as the president of Nigeria. Imagine now we have a president called Ahmed Tinubu. As far as the northern folks are concerned, is a Yoruba president. And whereas you just had a president who was supposedly to be a northern president, A northern president that did not even do well for the northern part of the country. Insecurity that was on number one of the campaign in 2015 doubled. We had barely Boko Haram in 2015, even though there were a bit of cattle rustling, farmer-elder conflict in the northwest and north central. But today, you had the biggest of all, bigger than even Boko Haram, which is called a bandit. The bandit don't just kill, they kidnap, and they go to a whole community and say that if the community don't pay XYZ amount of money, they were going to invade them. And you see that a government who is responsible will first of all take the safety of the citizen to priority. In fact, that's the whole idea of government, the welfare and safety of the citizen. When that fails, what then is the essence of government? In Nigeria today, the welfare and safety of Nigerian people is a mirage. So what then is the essence of government? And it calls to question this idea that we kept talking about, democratic backsliding, democratic recession. The challenge with our democracy. Democracy is not able to deliver maximum good to the people of the region, not just in Nigeria, of the region. I mean, whether you talk about Ghana today, they're preparing for elections, and all the issues that are coming up, they are development issues. You talk about Senegal, the last time of the election, they were development issues. Most every big country you go, talk about development issues. No road, no electricity, no power.
Now, what are some of the indices with which Nigerians could say or can say that indeed the country is in recession in terms of development?
Nigeria is in democratic recession. We are reversing our gains in democracy. Nigeria today, heavily, they are cracking down on dissent voices. Press freedom is no longer as it used to be. What is the whole essence of media? The fourth estate of the realm is to put a check and balance on government work. So when media does that and the government does not feel comfortable, they go after them. So beyond that, if you want to travel from point A to point B, particularly if the road is up to 4-5 hours journey, you are likely not going to go by road. You are likely going to spend money to fly. Because if the individual is kidnapped on the road, the money to have used to fly will become cheaper chico. So the money you are supposed to fly maybe around 300,000 naira, when the fellow is kidnapped, he may be asked to bring 300 million. So, in fact, businesses is almost in a downslide. The economy of Nigeria has led beyond economic recession. I don't know where we'll put it now because it is no longer meltdown. It started melting down more than 10 years ago. It has gone beyond recession. It's worrisome. All the indices of development are lacking in the system.
Are we looking at unemployment, migration among people?
So you are adding up to the list. Unemployment has led to a high level of migration. You see, this agency that is in control of visa application, VSF, they released a statement that Nigerians should be careful of scammers around their facility who are not agents, who are not visa agents. They should be careful because of the hurricane of visa applications coming from Nigerians. Every Nigerian wants to Japa. Japa is the syndrome to leave the country by all means. In fact, people with good job are even leaving. People with good job are Japaing. And you go to banks, you go to hospitals, good doctors have gone. Good nurses have gone. The latest reported by the military in the last 3 years, over 1,000 military officials have resigned to Japa, particularly those in the medical field. So unemployment is increasing, insecurity challenge is popping up because the Edo's mind is the devil's workshop.
Even though Nigeria appears to be one unified country with the hashtag End Bad Governance protest in August, it's as if to say Nigerians are saying enough is enough. And how do you think these challenges can be addressed, Mr. Austin, in order to allow for the full implementation of some of these developmental projects to allow ordinary people and populations enjoy dividends of democracy?
As part of solution number one, reverse policies that are not working. Be true to yourself and apologize to say, I thought this will work, but what I will do, I'm going to revert. This is where we now need to pass through. We're going through. Or alternatively, what we usually do with policy, introducing policies like this, you do what they call incremental policy. If you wanted to remove subsidy totally, you will start by reducing it at least 30%. You move to 50%, maybe you move to 70%, and gradually, you take the people gradually while putting alternative in place. There are too many of it. Of course, there are political appointees. If remove those ones who are not the right peg, reduce the size of your government. So there are a combination of many things that need to be done. We think homegrown invest more into agricultural production. But to invest in agricultural production, you would have dealt with insecurity. You cannot have agriculture in the north, which is more like the beehive of agricultural activities in Nigeria. And yet the same north is also the beehive of insecurity in the country. You can't have that. You can't have the two correlate. So there must be sincerity of purpose. There must be some level of integrity coming into play.
Austin Naigbe is a Nigerian public affairs analyst. And this is where we wrap up this episode of In the Sahel, WADR's weekly security program aiming to tell the African security crisis the African way. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to my guests and colleagues for their contributions. Join this frequency, West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM every Friday at 7:30 a.m. and the same day at 6:30 p.m. for the rebroadcast. Also, join the discussion on our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR News, and stream live on WADR.org. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Until next week, it's a bye for now.